This is the Haulin Assets podcast, where we show you how to start and run your own trucking company. Ever wanted to go out on your own? Follow Chris as he goes through the highs and lows of running on his own authority.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to episode 159 of the Haulin Assets podcast. I am your host, Craig. Over there, he is Chris.
This is take three, of the intro.
Chris,
so
the curtain stays closed.
This is going to go really well today. I can already tell.
You know, we were just talking before we turned on the microphones about how, you know, it does take some measure of awareness and intelligence and wisdom to recognize and avoid fraud. Okay, and that is our topic today. Well, I can tell you, I would be susceptible today. Okay.
Yeah. If you're going to commit fraud on Craig, do it now.
Do it, yeah. Now's your chance.
The door's
it's
open.
too late. You know, if you're listening to this, that means that I had the wherewithal at least to release the episode. So back off. All right. So we are talking about fraud. This is a subject that, Chris, you've touched on every so often through the years as we've talked. But we've never actually devoted a whole episode to this. So I'm excited to kind of dig into it. Excited might be the wrong word, but I'm anxious to hear what you have to say, what your experiences have been, all that. So we're going to be talking about fraud, but more pressing matters are upon us, Chris. How is the trailer? Does it still smell like onions? How are things looking?
We got rid of the onion smell. It's a little bit of a constant battle, you know, battling smells in trailers. But yeah, we got rid of it. Got the truck loaded, and I appreciate everybody for their tricks and tips that they gave us and they shared with us. We're using some of them now, and we will report back later on what we feel like are some of the best ones.
Well, okay, so you say you got rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
But you tried a few different methods, or you're still trying methods?
Well, onions is something that we haul on a somewhat regular basis. Yeah. So, you know, it gives us an opportunity to try to find different ways to get rid of that smell.
Okay.
So we'll see what happens.
Episode 161 is going to be how to clean your freaking trailer, you slobs.
Yeah, it's a constant battle.
All right, well, good. Anything else happening? Any other tales from the road?
Not so much tales from the road. We do have Larry's back with us again. You know, we knew he was going to eventually come back. He had some family stuff he had to take care of, so he's back. It's good to have him back on the road with us. And Nate's gone for 2 weeks doing military stuff, so I'm dispatching.
I'm catching people up. Larry being one of the drivers, mm-hmm. Nate being the
business partner.
Business partner. What's his title? Is he president of the company or?
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that sounds good. President.
I've had a couple jobs where they just say, put whatever you want on your resume. I don't care. Just do the freaking job.
Yeah.
Okay, well, good. Good to have him back. Good. Anything else you want to share before we dive into fraud?
No, maybe by the time I'm done with this couple weeks of dispatching, I'll have some more stories to share next time.
I have no doubt about that. All right, well, in that case, everybody needs to go to a few different places, and if you've been around, then you know the drill. Haulin Assets LLC for full show notes, motorcarrierhq.com for tips, tools, and people to help you out to make that leap to owner-operator or to build your fleet. And on that note, you can also go it alone, at least for a little while. Get the basics down with Haulin Assets Academy. That's HaulinAssetsAcademy.com. No G, everybody. No G. HaulinAssetsAcademy.com. You're going to find 3 different courses there that will help you get started with the most vital pieces that you're going to need as you build your business. So there you go, Chris. How's that?
That's awesome.
We've got our housekeeping down pat. All right, fraud. Chris, show me on the doll where the fraudsters hurt you.
This is one of those episodes that it's a topic I wish we didn't have to talk about.
Yeah, fair enough.
But we do have to talk about it because it's gotten crazy. Fraud's always been around. It's always something we've had to kind of keep our eyes on. But in the last 3 to 6 months, it just seems like it has gone rampant. And, there's really no need for dishonesty in business. I think it's counterproductive. It's very short-sighted because in the long run, it almost always catches up with you. But here we are talking about it because it's been crazy. And I've been putting a lot of thought into why does it seem like it's so bad right now? And I think a lot of it has to do with, as we all know, we're in a really tough freight market. And I think it's caused people to get desperate. So I think you got kind of two things happening here. Because of this desperation, you have some people who are committing fraud who normally wouldn't commit fraud because they're in a desperate situation. They're trying to stay afloat. And then you also have people who are more susceptible to fraud because they're desperate. They're looking for a quick fix, an easy answer, something to kind of help solve their problems. And it just makes them a little bit more susceptible to fraudsters because, fraudsters are helping them. They've got other things on their mind. They're distracted and they're not keeping their focus on what they should be. And I'm falling victim to being being
a victim of fraud.
A victim of fraud. So we're going to talk about some of the things today that to look out for, hopefully give some people some tools that they can recognize. You mentioned HaulinAssetsLLC.com, show notes. This is a really good episode to go to the show notes, look at some examples. We've got some example emails. We've got some example forms. We've got a bunch of things on there of things to look out for that we have seen where people are trying to fraud you.
Sure. Defraud, I think, is the verb.
Well, whatever. English.
Hey, I'm just trying. I'm working my way back from my sick brain, okay? All right, so let's talk then about how to see it. Because for me, I love talking about the why. Why is this happening right now? What's going on? But I don't think that that's going to be as relevant as how do you spot it? How do you avoid it, right? And I don't know, when I was a banker, so as longtime listeners know, I worked in banking for a while, and they would give you the training on how to spot fraud, from your customers, but also, people emailing your customers or whatever. How do you spot these things? And it's so obvious, the Nigerian princes and all that sort of thing, right? It's the badly spelled emails that make no grammatical sense, that sort of thing. You get the phone call and it's like, hi, this is the president of the United States. Can I have $100? Right. Okay. That's easy. But I imagine that there are probably some easy fraud situations to spot as a trucker. But there are probably some pretty sophisticated ones out there, I would imagine.
Yeah, there's still those really easy ones, but it's getting crazy how sophisticated some of them are. We're going to, one that kind of just came to light to me today is one that's coming from what appears to be a .gov email account, and it's causing all kinds of issues. And so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about other things. And it's, like I said, they're getting really sophisticated. So everybody's spidey senses need to be on point to try to avoid these kind of things.
Yeah.
And so we'll talk a little bit about that. One of the things let's just start with jumping right in, things that involve loads. So one of the most common ways that fraud is being conducted right now is through load boards. There are fraudsters who are hacking into load board systems or getting on load board systems and posting fraudulent loads, or they're posting loads that are being double brokered. And those are things that you need to watch out for because they can really cause you issues. And the tricky thing, double brokering's been around for a long time, but it's becoming really prevalent. And one of the things that you really have to keep out for, and that makes it tricky, is sometimes somebody will double broker you a load and it'll pay out just fine and won't cause you any issues, where other times they'll double broker you a load, you haul it, and they never pay you.
Right. Now,
sorry, go ahead. So you have to be careful. There's a lot of different ways that happens. So let's talk about that and what are some of the things we can do to kind of spot those and avoid them.
Okay. All right. Well, you already mentioned the one that appeared to come from a .gov account. That would be one of my first tips is when you're dealing with emails. If it's somebody you have not emailed with before, you go, let's say you use Gmail. I think it works the same on Outlook, but there will be the to and from line at the top, and there's a little drop-down caret. click it and see what it says. Because you'll get ones all the time that say like, oh, your Amazon shipment has been delayed. And you're like, oh, crap. I ordered something a couple days ago. And you open it up and it's like Amazon customer service at Z3YQX dot, I don't know, Yugoslavia.com or whatever. I don't mean to pick on the poor Yugoslavians, but who don't exist anymore, I don't think. But anyway, so yeah, look at it. And if you don't recognize the URL immediately.
The domain, whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
Like, okay, so if you bank with Chase, it has to say at chase.com at the end, right? And if it says anything else, you'd be very, very careful.
And that's one of the things that you kind of need to keep your eye out for, because one of the ways that they're being really tricky is they'll go in and create a domain that's very similar to the actual domain name. Like they may just spell it a little different. They may do Chase, C-H-A-C-E instead of C-H-A-S-E, or they'll do, instead of totalqualitylogistics.com, they'll do totalqualitylogistic.com and drop the S, and they can, so you just have to be super vigilant and watching those email addresses and those domain names. Those are usually really good indicators of is it fraud. Now you take, for example, Gmail accounts. Every once in a while you'll have a legit broker that uses a Gmail account, but it's pretty uncommon.
Right.
So anytime I see a Gmail account on a load, tied to a load, or an email coming from a Gmail account, that red flag right there, that's a warning sign. It doesn't mean it's 100% fraud, but there's a much higher possibility that something coming from like a Gmail or a Yahoo or a Outlook.com or a iCloud.com, any one of those more generic email accounts, it's as likely fraud as it is legit.
Right. If it's not your mother.
Yeah.
If it's a business to business thing, be very careful. Okay, good. So what are some other red flags that you would want to point out? So
again, usually with fraud, there's not always a smoking gun like the prince from Nigeria. That's kind of a smoking gun, right? Most of the time there's not a smoking gun, but there are lots of little red flags like that domain name. So some other things that you can kind of keep a lookout for when you're dealing with loads. And one of the biggest ones is the rate confirmation. When you get the rate confirmation on ones that are fraudulent, they're more likely to have errors in them. So the logo might look a little weird. Sometimes it's blurry, or sometimes it's a little out of place or not in the right spot. That's something you can look for. A lot of the times they're missing information. Sometimes even your company name as the carrier is missing. Sometimes the layout is wrong, and just the formatting can be off, and so words might overlap each other a little bit, or something just seems out of place. Anytime you see something like that, again, any one of those is a red flag. It might not necessarily mean it's fraudulent, but it does definitely mean I need to dig a little deeper and look further into this and validate that what I'm getting is correct. Which
honestly is, for those who are making the leap to owner-operator or trying to build a fleet, trying to build a company into something, that professionalism might feel annoying. And that those details. Oh, how good is your logo? Is it blurry? Yeah. Where you're not trying to commit fraud, but you send it to somebody and they're going to just reject it out of hand because they've gotten 10 of these this week and they knew they were all fraud, and yours looks an awful lot like one of those, right? So it's also a lesson that way. Be professional, pay attention to those details. When you're having your business to business communication, make sure that it is as correct as possible. It matters.
It absolutely does.
Yeah. Yep. And then, but there are context clues as well. So we talked about that, kind of the stuff that's in your face. But you mentioned a down market right now. I imagine that would be something as well, where, okay, hopefully the market is starting to look up. But if somebody sends you a load, on a load board says, hey, I've got a load, and it's, 35 cents above the norm for these load boards. Well, that's
another big red flag.
Big red flag, right? Yep. Yeah. Have you run into those? Have you seen a lot of those?
No, I wouldn't say we've seen a lot of them, but we do. Yeah, we've run into it. In fact, I think it was one of the first times we ever got burned with Haulin assets. It was a situation like that.
Oh, wow.
Where I'm like, oh man, this is a really good rate. This is awesome.
Oops.
Never paid.
Yeah.
So you've got to kind of keep your eye open for that. So when you see one of these red flags, then my next question is, what do you do?
That is a good
Or
question.
maybe that's your next question.
Well, okay. So what do you do? Ditch it, right? Don't do anything. But my question would be, is there a reporting mechanism or something?
So usually what I do when I see any one of those red flags or just anything else that looks out of the ordinary, or even sometimes when it's just I'm dealing with a new broker I've never dealt with, I find a way to independently verify that load is a legitimate load. So there's a couple ways that I do this. One of them, I look at the domain and I go to that domain. So if it says, you again take that totalqualitylogistics.com.
Sure.
I go and look at that website, and if it looks legit, great. And then that's a good something that can kind of help calm me down a little bit. But I still don't necessarily just rely specifically on that. There's another thing, and I'm going to include the link to this in the show notes, but you can check the age of the domain.
Right.
And so a lot of the times these fraudsters, they've just recently created that domain, and it may only be 6 months old. And so if you go into this website that I'll share in the show notes, you can type the domain in. It'll tell you how long it's been around. If it's been around for 10 years, you're probably okay. If it's been around for 10 days,
Heads
probably
up.
not.
Yeah.
So, but one of the biggest tools that I use is I'll try to call that broker and verify the load. Never use the phone number or the email address that is on the rate confirmation to do that. Because if it's a fraudulent rate confirmation, they put a fraudulent phone number and you call it and they'll just verify it.
Goes right to them.
It goes right to the fraudsters. So I'll go on to the internet and do a Google search or a Bing search or whatever search engine you use and search for that company's name and see what phone number pulls up there. And I'll call that phone number. And that's usually a much more secure way to verify it. And I'll just call them, give them the load number and say, hey, who's this load assigned to? And they'll tell you. And when you do that, they're always super appreciative because they're getting burned by fraudsters as much as we are. And so everybody's happy to do that. It makes everybody feel more comfortable. So do that. Another way that you can verify them is if you're using a factoring company. The factoring companies have typically vetted the phone numbers, the broker's phone numbers and email addresses in their system. And so that's usually a pretty safe way to verify. So if you're using a factoring company, most of them have a portal that you can go in, you can search for brokers and shippers, find that broker shipper in there, and then you can use that phone number or that email address to verify that it's a legitimate load.
Okay, good. Any other notes on load boards and other load fraud?
I think that's it.
Okay,
that's pretty good.
All right. Well, keep your eyes out, right? Just keep your eyes open when you're out there. So other areas of fraud, then other ways that people can come at you, and some of these are going to be more or less unique to trucking. Others are going to be more general. You should watch out for these regardless. Whoever you are, right? So give me an example.
One that it can be trucking and anything else is card skimmers at truck stops or gas stations. If you're filling up your personal car, and basically what that is it's a device that fraudsters will install on a card reader. So when you swipe your card, it reads the card number, and then they can go use your card number and your card information, put it on another card that they make. And then they can use that and steal your money. So card skimmers are another way that's really prevalent, that's happening all the time. And so what you have to do is just be careful. And there's some good indications that a card skimmer's been installed. If where you swipe your card, the card reader is like flimsy, or if it looks like it's been tampered with, it's loose.
If it doesn't look like it's flush with the rest of the console.
All those things are good indications that you may want to be careful. Go inside, scan your card inside rather than scanning it at the pump. So that's a big one. Another way you can avoid card skimmers, most of the big truck stops, you can authorize the pump with an app on your phone instead of swiping your card. That's a good way to avoid fraud. And then also just kind of be vigilant in some areas that are hot spots. Like Florida's kind of been notorious for card skimmers.
Oh, interesting.
So, might want to be a little bit more vigilant if you're in a place like Florida. Also, the smaller truck stops, it's a little bit more prevalent because they just don't have the same security systems or security people monitoring all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And so they're a little bit more susceptible to that.
Okay. All right. And then there's I'm posing as a government agent. Okay, let's talk about this one because I've gotten this myself a few times where, you get the phone call or a letter in the mail. Hey, this is the IRS and you're freaking screwed.
Yeah.
And if your stomach doesn't turn into a ball of lead, sometimes somebody says I'm from the IRS and I need to talk to you. Like, you're not human, right? So it's understandable that when somebody says, hey, I'm from the government, you're going to naturally, most of us will naturally want to hear them out, obey what's going on. Hey, I don't want to get in any more trouble, so I'll cooperate, right? So does that happen with all these regulatory agencies that you guys deal with?
Absolutely. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about them and kind of one of two things usually is happening when somebody's using one of those agencies or trying to appear as one of those agencies to commit fraud. And so the first one is they're trying to get you to pay for something that you either don't need or you can get for free, or they're just trying to get you to overpay for it. And so this happens with the IRS, this happens with the FMCSA, it happens with state agencies like the state DOT. All of them, not them, but fraudsters try to essentially impersonate them. Right. Try to make you think that they are one of these government agencies. And so this is, again, one of those areas where you really need to keep your eye out for. One of the things that's really common is when they are sending you, like when one of these fraudsters is trying to act like them, is they get a domain, a website domain or URL that looks really close to the government one. So it might say something like fmcsa.com instead of FMCSA at fmcsa.gov.
Right.
So a lot of the times they come from a .com or what are some of the other ones? .net or any one of the other dots. Anything other than .gov.
That's actually an important thing. If people don't know this, it does not have to be any of those things now. The way the current iteration of the web works, you can make up all sorts of domain endings. So you'll see, MLB.tv, Fubo.tv, right? So you get this .tv, you can do anything you want, which does make it trickier, honestly.
It does. It makes it
watch out for those
way
things.
Trickier. Pretty much anything coming from a federal agency, a government agency, is going to come with .gov at the end. And so that gives you a certain level of comfort, but I'm going to talk about this in a little bit, but one of the things that's going around now, they've made it look like a .gov address. So just be extra careful of those kind of things.
Sure.
So again, like I said, they try to get you to pay for something. So oftentimes what happens is you'll get an email or a letter from them, and it'll have threatening information.
Sure.
If you don't pay this fine by such and such a date, you can be fined up to $10,000 a day, yada, 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 something like that. And they try to create fear so that you pay them to do whatever it is they want to get paid for. Another thing that happens that doesn't necessarily involve pay is they'll do what's called phishing.
Sure.
And phishing is they're trying to get information out of you. So let's talk about that .gov one that we're seeing right now.
Yeah.
It's coming from an email address that's an at fmcsa.gov email address, or they make it look like it. It's not really the FMCSA's address, but they've tricked the computer systems to make it show on your end that it's coming from a fmcsa.gov address. But then they have you fill out this form and submit it to a different, either a fax number or a mailing address or anything in that form, they're asking for personal information, right?
If it's asking for a fax, it probably really is the government,
It
Chris.
might be, yeah.
No, but I get what you're saying, yeah.
So they're fishing for information. That's
Right.
one of the, it's called the phishing thing. So they may be asking for your bank information. They may be asking for personal information that they can then go use to steal your identity. It's lots of things like that. So again, these guys that are posing as the federal agencies are typically either trying to get you to pay for something that you either don't need, or trying to get you to way overpay for it, or they're trying to fish and get information out of you that they will then use to steal your identity and then steal stuff from you in other ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Got to watch out. There have been some really high profile phishing scandals where, giant corporations, government agencies, individuals have been brought down because they gave out information to the wrong person. So it can happen to anybody.
Smart people have fall for these. Like, I looked at that .gov one, I probably would have fallen for it. Other than I don't typically like fill out forms with my personal information, just send them to somebody. But like, I would have thought it was legit. But anyway, you have to be so vigilant and be careful and find an independent way to verify stuff. So
how would you verify it? I mean, you talked about a couple examples, but like with the government one,
I do the same thing.
Same thing. Call the IRS and say, hey, do you have agents doing this? It's
really easy to do an internet search and find a legit phone number to the IRS, find a legit phone number to the FMCSA. And if you call those, you may be on hold for a stupid amount of time.
Sure.
But they will typically help you out
right.
and be able to tell you if it's something legitimate or not.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me ask you another question then. These scams, are they more prevalent for newer owners? Like if you're a brand new business entity, that's public information and anybody can get that, right, on whatever state website. And so I'm just using my imagination here. It seems like, hey, okay, this owner operator has only been going for 2-3 months. They're going to be desperate for loads. They're going to be,
and they're inexperienced. They don't know what right looks like as much, and so they're definitely more susceptible. And so you've got to be careful there. And one of the things that they're trying to do, these fraudsters are trying to do, is use phishing schemes with new entrants, and they're using the new entrant audit as a way to do that. So again, in the show notes, if you'll go to the show notes, where I'm sharing some actual domains where we've seen some of this fraudulent stuff come out of, domains to look out for. But they're trying to say, hey, you're having a new entrant audit. We need this personal information from you filled out on this form before we can commence with it. So again, they're phishing and trying to get some of your personal information that they don't have. The government, when you filed for your DOT number, when you filed for your authority, they already have all that personal information that they need.
Right.
They're not going to be asking for more.
Or for you to repeat what you've already given them.
Yeah. So just be careful and be leery of those things. If you're have a brand new authority, be very careful with your new entrant. Make sure that the person that says they're there to audit you is a legitimate person there to audit you. So just, again, be vigilant and verify.
Make sure it's not just George Clooney and Brad Pitt like running some kind of scheme. Right.
Yeah.
Because it happens all the time.
Yeah, for sure.
At least 3 times that I can count. Okay. Well, Chris, if you don't mind, I'm going to take this opportunity to basically turn this into a Motor Carrier HQ commercial, because this is actually a really good way to use motorcarrierhq.com, where you're going to have somebody who you can get on the line, somebody who you can chat with online if you prefer to do it that way. But Motor Carrier HQ is where those new authorities can go and have somebody in their corner who they can talk to about this sort of thing, right? Hey, I got this. Something doesn't quite seem right. What's your take on it? right? Is that something that people can use that for?
Absolutely. And all these examples that I've talked about and that are going to be in the show notes are from clients that have said, hey, is this legit? They've reached out to us and asked, and we'll do the research, or we've seen it so much now that we can typically a lot of the time just say, yeah, this is good, or no, that's not legit. Somebody's trying to commit fraud.
Okay. All right. Good. Any other angles you want to hit when it comes to fraud? What we're looking out for, how to avoid it? Or do you feel like we've kind of covered the broad strokes here?
I think we've covered it as far as what to look out for and as far as fraud goes. But if you have been a victim of fraud, contact your local law enforcement agency. Make sure they're aware of it. And then you can also contact the Inspector General's office, federal office. In the show notes, I'm going to put the 1-800 number for them there that you can call as well. You just be careful. Yeah, it's dangerous out there. Be careful.
I would say you are your line of defense when a fraud gets common enough, then enough voices reporting it really, brings up the heads of the ears prick up at the government agencies, right? Yep. So I don't know. I wouldn't want to get anybody's hopes up that your case will be individually taken incredibly seriously and in a timely fashion. That doesn't always happen, unfortunately. So my lesson there is you've got to be your own line of defense for that, right?
Yep.
So, all right, Chris. Well, everybody be safe out there. Be careful. Read your emails closely and don't assume that everything is on the up and up. Make sure that you go through your due diligence. I mean, we can talk about due diligence all day long. But anyway, lastly, go to HaulinAssetsLLC.com or go to Facebook, or heck, go to YouTube, where, Chris, we hit 4,000 subscribers. Very exciting. Go to any of those places and comment. Let us know what you have seen. If you've seen any scams that we didn't talk about today, if something happened to you in the past, or, hey, if you're a scammer and you want to let us know what your experience has been scamming truckers, we'll put you in direct contact with the local authorities, and we're happy to do it.
Or just come on and we'll blur out your face and we'll disguise your voice and tell our audience what to look out for so that you can't scam them.
I always use a .go.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. We will see you for some numbers next time for the...
or maybe not. It may not be.
Oh, okay.
I've got another episode idea that... especially since it's going to be when we record next is going to be so early on in the month. I don't know if I'll have the financials ready. So I most likely it'll be something other than financials.
Duly noted. Okay. Well, either way, you'll get something good. So stay tuned. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Rick.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Haulin Assets. It's going to be a good day,
It's a rocky
Chris.
start.
It's good. It's a good day. Welcome, everybody, to episode 159 of the Haulin Assets podcast. I was going to make a fraud joke right off the bat, and I was like, nah, let's just get to it. Okay. All right. Take 3.
I don't know if we've ever done a take 3
I don't
on
think
the
we
intro.
ever have. I think this might be our first take 3. I am a little under the weather, I'll be honest. So that's my excuse.